The sky above Kastari 5 had long stopped showing stars. What used to be a brilliant sweep of galaxies now boiled with thick gray clouds that shimmered like bruises across the heavens. The people below, those that hadn't been harvested or reduced to ash, had learned to keep their eyes down, heads bowed, waiting for the next raid. Earth was gone. That's what they'd been told. The first wave had come like a whisper, scout drones the size of needles, slicing through atmosphere, scanning, marking. Then came the Reapers, cold, efficient, silent. No demands, no warnings, just annihilation. They didn't want land, they didn't want peace. They wanted us broken, genetically filtered, pacified. 3 years of silence from Earth. 3 years of being hunted like dogs. Rye sat on the rusting hull of a crashed civilian shuttle, his rifle across his knees, boots blood-caked from last night's ambush. His breath fogged in the cold. The crater below him was a smoking ruin of what used to be a resistance cell. Good people, tough men and women, all dead now. He didn't mourn anymore. That part of him had been shelled out after the second orbital cleansing, after he watched his younger brother burn alive in a panicked drop pod, screaming for help that never came. Hope was a joke they stopped telling a long time ago. "You're wasting time," growled a voice behind him. Rye didn't turn. "We're all wasting time, just waiting to die slower than the others." The man behind him, Thorn, tall and bitter, huffed. "Then why are you still holding that rifle?" Because letting go meant admitting it was truly over. Rye didn't say that out loud. He wasn't the poetic type. He just stood up, slinging the weapon over his shoulder. Thorn said, "Got a signal last night." "No, you didn't." "I did. Clean one. Burst code, Earth Naval Command format. Came through the deep channel." "Bullshit." Rye's tone was flat. Hope was poison. "You let it in. It starts carving holes in your survival instinct." Thorn stepped closer. "I'm telling you, Earth's coming. Fleet code, command structure, coordinates. They're alive." Rye studied the man's face. In this world, lying like that could get you gutted in your sleep. But Thorn didn't have the look of a zealot. He looked scared. "You sure it wasn't a trap?" "Even if it is, it's the first real signal we've had in years. You think I'm not scared it's bait?" "I am. But I'll take bait over rot." Rye exhaled through his nose, long and slow. Then, like thunder cracking dry wood, the sky tore. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't hopeful. It was terrifying. Streaks of blinding silver burst from the clouds, carving the storm apart. The clouds didn't roll away. They evaporated, melted by the kinetic wake of descending fleet carriers. Not one, not 10, hundreds. The fleet spread like a swarm of war-forged gods, guns gleaming, hulls scorched from atmosphere friction, coming in hot. No hails, no speeches, just vengeance. The Reaper skiffs that had dominated the skies for years spun wildly, trying to reroute. Too late. Earth's capital ships opened fire mid-descent. Not lasers, rail slugs, each the size of a truck, ripping through Reaper vessels like they were paper. Rye stood frozen, jaw clenched, throat dry. Thorn's voice broke the silence. "Told you." Rye didn't answer. He just stared. Because for the first time in years, the sky was on fire. But it wasn't killing us. It was killing them. The first rail slug shattered the atmosphere like thunder in a bottle. A Reaper cruiser, massive, sleek, black as oil, cracked in half mid-sky, spilling its passengers into freefall. Rye and Thorn watched in stunned silence as the ship's wreckage screamed towards the surface, fire trailing its body like a comet of revenge. It hit the plains with a sound that registered in bone, not ears. Then came the rest. Earth's fleet didn't bother with subtlety. After 3 years of silence, after watching entire colonies die begging into static, they weren't here to negotiate. The second wave of carriers broke formation, splitting into tactical trios. Escort ships spiraled off like angry insects, deploying drop pods by the hundreds. Rye could see the shimmer of defensive shells peeling away as they entered the upper atmosphere, revealing hardened steel canisters filled with something worse than death. Humans who had been waiting. The ground began to shake. Each pod that landed spat dirt and flame, carving craters as wide as houses. Some slammed into buildings, others impaled themselves in deep ravines. Then they hissed open, and what poured out didn't look like soldiers. They looked like executioners. Exosuits, angular and gunmetal gray, boots like anvils, helmets with crimson visors and HUDs that blinked fury in every movement. Their rifles weren't just weapons, they were judgments. The first squad marched straight through a Reaper patrol without slowing down. No warnings, no tactics, just direct engagement. 4 shots, 4 kills. The Reapers bled neon, their bodies twitching in unnatural spasms, confused by how quickly they were overwhelmed. "Holy shit," Thorn whispered. Rye blinked. "They're not infantry. That's Tier 5 armor. That's Black Zone loadout." "That's not supposed to exist anymore." "Apparently someone forgot to tell Earth." A low, steady thrum filled the air, vibration that climbed up your spine. Rye turned his head and saw the source. A tank unlike any he'd seen. It wasn't a tank in the old sense. It moved like it hated the terrain. No treads. Anti-grav base scorched the ground wherever it floated. Its hull glowed with a heat shield, deflecting small arms fire like insects on glass. A single turret, long and slender, rotated smoothly toward a distant Reaper nest. When it fired, the beam was silent. But the nest didn't survive long enough to understand what hit it. The skyline turned into a massacre. Reapers scrambled from hidden tunnels. Underground bunkers erupted as missiles punched their roofs open. The sky shimmered with dogfights, Reaper interceptors screaming in corkscrews as Earth's fighters, sleek, unpainted, pragmatic, tore through them like hawks among pigeons. And somewhere, deep inside, Rye felt something strange clawing its way out of the numbness. It wasn't hope. It was rage, pent up, feral, long overdue. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Thorn asked, already checking his rifle's magazine. "Yeah." "Then let's go. There's a Reaper holdout near the refinery. Last recon said 2 squads guarding a converter tower." Rye nodded, eyes fixed on the chaos. "And we don't wait for orders?" Thorn grinned, bitter and wild. "We are the orders now." They moved fast. Everywhere they ran, Earth's soldiers were already 2 steps ahead. The fleet didn't waste time securing zones. They moved like they'd practiced this invasion for years, as if every street, bunker, and hillside had been simulated down to the inch. Drones flew overhead, tracking movement, pinging targets in real time. One zipped past Rye and Thorn, paused, then beamed a red arrow into their HUDs. Target zone, 800 meters south. Enemy, active. Cleansing, priority. 2. Rye didn't know who was running Fleet Command now, but they weren't playing politics. They were playing to win. The refinery district was a twisted mess of slag towers and half-molten walkways. A decade ago, it had pumped fuel and heat into the planet's first colony dome. Now it was Reaper territory, and the stink proved it. Rye crouched behind a collapsed column and raised his scope. 6 guards, standard carapace, no heavy artillery. "We got surprise on our side," Thorn said. "Number we've got Earth." The moment he said it, a low whump cracked through the haze. One of the Reaper guards suddenly exploded, not burned, not shot, just detonated. A second fell, twitched, and stopped moving. No sound of gunfire, no trail. Rye scanned the air. Snipers, high altitude, satellite-guided, Hell-tier precision. Within 10 seconds, all 6 guards were dead, each one hit in a soft spot, joint, eye slit, exposed vent. A voice buzzed through their implants. Clear the site. Leave no structures standing. Reclaim, cleanse, report. It was a woman's voice, cold, without accent, like someone who'd never spoken a kind word in her life. Rye and Thorn moved in, not to assist, to finish the job. Inside the tower, the converter core still pulsed blue. It hummed with Reaper tech, liquid data, organic processors wired into the floor. Rye didn't ask questions. He pulled a satchel from his pack, primed it, and slapped it onto the core. Beep, blink, arm. Time to go. They ran, ducking beneath sparking conduits, past Reaper corpses that twitched with leftover charge. Outside, Earth's soldiers were already marching past the area, not stopping, not even checking the zone. They'd marked it, cleansed it, moved on. Machine efficiency, human brutality. The explosion turned the tower into molten light. Rye didn't flinch. He turned to Thorn. I need to find command. Why? Because I want in. Thorn squinted. You're not in enough already? Number, I want to take this fight all the way back. Not just here. Not just this outpost. I want to follow them to whatever pit they crawled from and burn it to dust. For a long moment, Thorn just stared at him. Then he nodded. Let's find command. They made their way toward the forward operating base, or what passed for one. Earth's forces weren't building forts. They were carving warpaths. The FOB was a mobile citadel, hovering 3 meters off the ground, its interior pulsing with energy. As Rye stepped in, a soldier scanned him and barked, Unit ID? We're not part of any unit. The soldier, helmet off, face scarred, gave them a hard look. Civilians? Survivors, Rye corrected. And we want in. The soldier didn't ask permission. He just tapped his comm. A voice responded instantly. Send them in. The interior smelled like oil and ozone. A command table glowed in the center, surrounded by 3 officers. All of them wore high-tier exogear, but their faces were visible. Hard eyes, scarred jaws, not one smile. You're late, one of them said. Rye blinked. Late? To the war. You think this is the start? This is Phase 6. We've been taking back colony worlds for 6 months. But Earth went dark. Because Earth needed time to stop the bleeding, to prepare. We went quiet so they'd think we were dead. Thorn muttered. They fooled all of us. They fooled everyone, the officer replied. And now we're back, with everything we've got. You want in? Prove yourself. We've got a firebase going up near the polar trench. It's hot. Reaper core nests. You make it through, you're in. No questions? No time. Rye didn't hesitate. We'll take it. As they turned to go, the officer called after them. One more thing. They paused. When you get there, remember one thing. This isn't about saving what's left. This is about making them bleed. Every system, every nest, every drop. Rye didn't smile. He just nodded. Because this wasn't about Earth coming to the rescue. It was about Earth coming for vengeance. The skiff dropped like a stone. No repulsors, no brakes, just free fall. Rye held tight to the grip bar overhead, his fingers aching with the force. Wind howled through the vents. The pilot, a silent bastard who hadn't said more than 5 words, guided them down the icy ravine with surgical violence. Below, the polar trench opened like a wound on the world, miles deep, walls jagged like broken teeth. The deeper they went, the darker it became. No sun ever touched the trench bottom, only the blue flicker of reaper nests and the slow pulse of death. 15 seconds! The pilot shouted. Thorn cocked his rifle, lips set in a thin line. His armor had been upgraded with fleet-grade plating, titanium weave with cold repulsion padding. Still, it couldn't stop the cold from creeping in. "You ready for this?" Thorn asked without looking. "No," Rye said, "but I don't care anymore." The skiff smashed into the landing zone, ice and gravel exploding outward. No slow exit, no prep. The bay door slammed open and the two men jumped into chaos. Gunfire lit up the trench floor. Earth soldiers were already pinned behind shattered ridgelines, trading shots with Reaper drones that hissed like insects and climbed the ice like spiders. Their weapons weren't plasma. They were something worse. Spine guns, metal shards fired at hypersonic speeds. One Earth trooper screamed as three of them punctured his leg, shredding armor and flesh in one hit. Rye dove for cover behind a jagged chunk of glacier. His breath misted in the air, frozen before it even escaped his mouth. Thorn landed beside him, checking the field. "Left flank's crumbling. Reaper's got a bunker built into the rock." "Turrets?" "Probably automated. Looks like 3 nests. Light carapace sentries, some crawlers." EMP. "Already tried. No luck. Must be shielded." Rye looked at the ice beneath them. "You ever see a glacier collapse?" Thorn narrowed his eyes. "You're thinking demo charges?" "Think bigger. Look, see that ridgeline above the bunker? Fracture point. One hit and the whole shelf goes." Thorn followed his gaze, and a slow grin crept onto his face. "That's why I stick with you." "Because I'm suicidal?" "Because you're suicidal, and usually right." They crawled through the field, ice snapping under their boots. Enemy fire cracked past their helmets. No precision, just pressure. A Reaper crawler spotted them, skittering over a boulder with unnatural grace. Its eyes flashed green. Rye didn't blink. He raised his sidearm and shot it in the mouth. One clean hit. The crawler's body spasmed, then folded like paper. They reached the base of the ridge. Snow piled deep here, masking the depth of the cracks. Rye pulled a thermal charge from his pack and embedded it deep into a fracture vein. 15 seconds after detonation, the whole ledge comes down. Thorn nodded, raising his rifle and providing cover fire as Rye sprinted back. As they reached the extraction line, Rye hit the detonator. The explosion was quiet. But the collapse was not. The ice shelf screamed as it gave way, groaning like a dying god. A cascade of frozen death thundered down the cliffside, slamming into the Reaper bunker and pulverizing everything beneath it. The nests vanished in a blink. Earth soldiers stared for a moment in disbelief. Then cheers. Wild, savage cheers. Thorn clapped Rye on the back. "That's a promotion-worthy stunt." "I don't want a promotion." "What do you want?" "I want to kill more of them." Before Thorn could answer, their comms buzzed. "New priority. Command orders. Deep core breach. Coordinates incoming. Estimated survival time, unknown." Rye looked down at the data flash. The location was deeper than they'd gone. Nearly trench floor. Reaper territory. The message continued. "This is a kill order. No retrieval. No evac. Mission is voluntary." Thorn sighed. "They're sending us to hell." "Number, they're sending us to end it." They moved. The trench narrowed the deeper they went. Reaper tech pulsed along the walls. living wiring that shifted when touched, pulling back like veins under skin. Thorn gagged as a scent filled the tunnel, burnt oil mixed with rotten citrus. It wasn't just machinery, it was organic. They reached the chamber marked on the data flash, and they saw it. A core engine, beating like a heart, at least 10 meters tall, surrounded by Reaper bodies that looked less like machines and more like evolution gone wrong. Twisted limbs, eyeless faces. The sound of breathing filled the chamber. Wet, labored, human-like. Rye raised his rifle but didn't fire, because standing at the core was a man. Or what had been a man once. He wore the remains of Earth's armor. His chest plate still bore the insignia of the 7th Terran Guard. But his arms were gone, replaced by black biomech limbs. Tubes fed into his neck. His skin was gray. He turned. His eyes glowed blue. Rye stepped forward, stunned. "You're from Earth?" The man's voice was a whisper and a scream at once. "I was." Thorn raised his rifle. "He's a sleeper, Reaper infected." "No," the man said. "I'm worse. I'm proof." "Proof of what?" "That they were never here to kill us. They were here to learn us, to absorb, to build better versions." Thorn pulled the trigger. But the man was fast, inhumanly fast. He dodged, lunged, and tackled Thorn to the ground. They wrestled, blood spraying into the snow, until Rye fired 4 times into the man's back. He didn't die easy. When it was over, Thorn was breathing hard, armor cracked, ribs broken. Rye knelt beside the dying hybrid. "Why? Why merge with them?" The man coughed. "Because Earth will never stop. You'll keep killing. You'll burn whole galaxies to erase what you fear. So I became what you fear." Rye stared at him, then stood. He planted charges at the base of the core, without hesitation. Thorn struggled to his feet, blood leaking from his mouth. "You sure this is worth it?" "I'm not doing this for Earth anymore." "Then who?" Rye looked at the hybrid's corpse. "For everyone they turned. For everyone they broke." They climbed out of the trench. As they reached the extraction point, the ground quaked. A muffled roar echoed from below as the charges detonated. The Reaper core imploded. A dark sun swallowed the trench. As the sky turned gold with a new dawn, Earth's fleet rained fire down on the remaining Reaper hives. Railguns screamed, artillery pounded, and humanity stood tall on a world they weren't supposed to survive. They didn't celebrate. Not when the trench collapsed, not when the last Reaper signal flickered out, and not when the fleet confirmed planetary control. Victories like this didn't taste sweet. They tasted like copper, like dirt in your mouth, like the cold grip of a trigger long held too tight. Rye and Thorn stood on the jagged ridge where they'd emerged, watching as the sun tried to peek through the chaos. It wasn't beautiful. It was awkward, bleeding light through clouds thick with smoke. Fires still burned across the valley. The snow had turned pink in places. "What now?" Thorn asked, voice raspy from the fight. Rye didn't answer immediately. He was staring up past the scorched skyline, past the blinking wrecks still falling from orbit. He was looking at the ships. Earth's ships. They hadn't left. In fact, more had arrived. 10 new cruisers. Black hulls, sleek, unmarked. "New fleet," Rye said flatly. Thorn narrowed his eyes. "They weren't here during the assault. Number they waited until we did the bleeding." The comm crackled. "Ground teams Bravo 5 and Delta 9 report to Ascendant Dawn for redeployment. Shuttle 17 en route." That was them. A few minutes later, a sleek atmospheric skimmer descended. It didn't land. Just hovered, rear hatch hissing open. No greeting. No medics. Just a faceless pilot in full fleet armor pointing inward. Rye stepped in without a word. Thorn followed, limping slightly, blood dried against the inside of his armor. As the hatch sealed, Rye felt something twist in his gut. It didn't feel like victory. The Ascendant Dawn was nothing like the other carriers. Bigger, colder, no crew walking the halls, no engineers covered in grease, no laughter, just silence and steel. The air was sterile, like a hospital with guns. A fleet officer met them at the docking bay. Female, short-cropped hair, no insignia on her collar. "You'll report to Command Deck 03. Debriefing is classified. You speak only when spoken to. You move only when ordered. Am I clear?" Thorn raised an eyebrow. "We just crawled out of a trench full of murder bugs. You think we care about protocol?" The officer didn't blink. "I think if you don't follow it, you'll find yourself airlocked for insubordination." Rye laid a hand on Thorn's arm before he could escalate. "We'll follow it." They were marched down 2 levels, past sealed doors labeled in high-clearance script. The lights above them glowed red, not alert red, suppression red, the color of places where bad things were kept quiet. Command Deck 03 was more a prison than a briefing room. 6 other survivors stood there, all from different worlds, different missions, all with the same dead look in their eyes. People who had seen what Rye and Thorn had seen. Maybe worse. Then the door opened, and he walked in. Not an admiral, not a general. Fleetmaster Andon. He wasn't famous, he wasn't even public. But Rye had heard his name whispered during his time in the outer colonies, always as a threat. A myth of the man Earth sent when total destruction was the only acceptable result. Tall, thin, unscarred, black uniform, no rank pins. His eyes looked through people, not at them. "You've survived," Andon said, voice flat, "which means you're either extremely competent or extremely lucky." No one answered. Andon circled the room slowly. "The Reapers aren't our enemy anymore. They're a symptom. You think they chose to attack? You think they have culture, ambition, malice?" Rye frowned. "They killed billions." "Yes. Like a virus kills a body. That doesn't mean it hates you. It means it follows a directive. And someone gave that directive." The room stiffened. Thorn spoke before Rye could stop him. "You're saying they're controlled?" Andon turned to him, those pale eyes gleaming. "Not controlled. Created. Engineered. And you just destroyed one of their breeding cores. You don't even realize what you did." "Saved lives," Rye said. "No," Andon replied. "You declared war on their masters." He tapped a console, and a hologram sprang to life, not of Reapers but of humans, ships, stations, uniforms, all human. But the insignias were different, a spiral inside a red triangle. "This is Praxis, a rogue human syndicate that disappeared 30 years ago. We thought they were dead. We were wrong." The image shifted. Labs mutation vats. Biomech hybrids. Rye felt bile crawl into his throat. "They built the Reapers?" Andon nodded. "They wanted to evolve beyond humanity. They failed. So they engineered a race to cleanse what they considered obsolete human DNA from colonized systems." Thorn stepped forward, voice low. "You're telling us we've been killing our own people's creations?" "I'm telling you," Andon said, "that we're not at war with aliens. We're at war with a splinter of ourselves. The Reapers are just the scalpel. The hand holding it is Praxis. And now that you've survived the trench, you'll help us cut that hand off." He turned to leave. Then paused. "One more thing. This isn't just a fight for planets. It's a fight for history. When this is over, the official story won't include Praxis. It won't include you. There will be no medals, no names on walls." Rye met his eyes. Then why fight it? Andon's mouth curved into a ghost of a smile. Because some of us still remember what Earth was before politics, before compromise, before fear. He left. The silence was thick after. One of the survivors, a man with a prosthetic arm, muttered, "So we're ghosts now." Rye shook his head. "Number we're hunters." Thorn leaned against the wall, still nursing his broken ribs. "You believe any of that?" Rye's voice was cold. "I've seen enough to believe worse." The briefing ended with new orders. Their new target, Krellis Prime. A supposed terraforming station gone dark 10 years ago, now identified as a Praxis-controlled genetics hub. No survivors expected. High enemy presence, unstable climate, biohazard risks, no support, no evac. They called it Operation Null Root. It was suicide, which made it perfect. Their team was small, 8 men, no medics, no engineers, just killers. They boarded a Black Dagger shuttle that didn't bear Earth's flag, didn't even have call signs. Once off the ship, they were no longer soldiers. They were deniable assets. The stars stretched as the shuttle entered FTL. Outside, a universe of betrayal and blood waited. Inside, Rye checked his weapon, locked a fresh mag, and said nothing. Because this wasn't about defending Earth anymore. It was about finding everyone who tried to erase it. They hit the planet hard. No orbital scans, no recon teams, no AI support. Just a straight blind drop into the black zone of Krellis Prime, like slamming a hammer into unknown flesh and hoping to crack something vital. The shuttle didn't even fire retros until the last second, skidding across glassed soil before half-crashing into a rocky ravine. Inside the cabin, the lights flickered. Rye bit back a curse as his helmet sealed with a hard click. Pressure stabilized. Breathing filters hissed. Outside, the world howled with wind that wasn't made by nature. Thorn stood, rifle already in hand. "So this is what hell feels like." "No," Rye muttered. "This is what hell tries to copy." The back ramp fell with a grinding shriek, and the air hit them like a wall, thick, acidic, heavy with a chemical bite that settled in your gut like fear. The surface of Krellis wasn't soil. It was a twisted crust of flesh-like growths and hardened biometal, webbed together like the planet itself had been infected. Behind them, the pilot didn't bother shutting the shuttle off. He just lifted off the second they were out, leaving them in dust and screaming wind. Rye activated his HUD. "Vitals up, comms open, thermal sweep, now." The other 6 squad mates moved with precision. Earth's special ops didn't breed softness. They bred obedience under fire. One by one, their readings synced. All green, until one paused. A younger soldier, name tag Marek, lifted his scanner and frowned. "Sir, there's movement." "Where?" "Everywhere." The HUD lit up with red pulses. Not enemies, not contacts, just motion. Beneath the ground, above the cliffs, inside the structures. "It's the entire planet," Thorn growled. "It's alive!" They moved anyway. No one on the team believed in superstition. Most had seen worse than ghost stories. But Krellis whispered in your ear when the wind blew. It pulled at your boots. It made your vision blur at the edges, like something was always just outside your periphery, watching, breathing, waiting. An hour into the march, they reached the first marker. A Praxis facility. Not a base, not a lab, a spire. Black stone twisted into impossible angles. It rose at least 50 stories. No visible windows, no power lines. Just pulsing veins running along the surface like heat-sensitive cables. It didn't look built, it looked grown. Rye signaled a halt. "Thermals?" "Negative," Thorn replied. "Dead as bone." They approached slowly, boots crunching on ash and metal scrap. The main entrance loomed open, not locked or guarded. It invited them, That was the worst part. Inside, the walls breathed. Not literally, but close. They flexed slightly, skin thin, exhaling faint mist. And the smell was unbearable. Rotting protein. They found corpses within the first 50 meters. Human. Praxis uniform. Torn open from the inside. Merrick gagged. Rye crouched beside one, nudging it over. No wounds. No external trauma, just emptied. Hollowed. As if something had eaten the soul and left the flesh. "I don't like this," Thorne muttered. "We're not here to like it," Rye said. Deeper into the facility, the architecture changed. Beams twisted like bone spines. Floors were part metal, part organic. Rooms no longer made sense, angled wrong, with doors that opened sideways, or ceilings that bled faintly from invisible cuts. Then they found the first subject. It was alive. Barely. Human, at least once. Now half-wired into the wall, its face stretched in a silent scream. Tubes fed into its chest. A soft pulse ran under its skin, like a heartbeat fighting a foreign rhythm. Its eyes twitched. Saw them. Rye raised his weapon, but it didn't speak. Didn't beg. It laughed. High, reedy, wrong. "I remember you," it wheezed. "You were the ones who believed in Earth." Merrick stepped back. "What the hell is this?" "Not Praxis," Rye said coldly. "Not anymore." He fired once. Quick. Clean. The thing stopped laughing. They pressed on. The deeper levels revealed true horror. Incubation chambers. Racks of failed hybrids. Human bodies spliced with machine tendrils, some still twitching, some alive, trapped in glass tubes with eyes begging for death. "You think Andon knew this was here?" Thorne asked, as they cleared a room full of failed human Reaper symbiotes. Rye didn't answer, because the answer was obvious. Of course he knew. A console blinked in the central chamber. Still functional, somehow untouched by the decay around it. Rye stepped forward, activated it. The screen showed schematics, Earth fleet armor, fleet weapons, Earth war doctrine, overlaid with Praxis code. They weren't just studying humans, they were copying them, mimicking the best traits, creating soldiers that looked like humans, thought like humans, but answered to Praxis. "Jesus," Merrick whispered. "They could infiltrate Earth, the fleet, the colonies. They already have," Rye said. "They've had 30 years. Behind the screen, a panel hissed open. A door slid aside, and a voice echoed softly through the hall. "You're late." The squad spun, weapons raised. The woman who stepped out wore Earth fleet armor. Perfect. Untouched. But her eyes glowed faintly blue. Not like a Reaper, not like a machine, but like something else entirely. "Don't shoot," she said. "I'm not your enemy." Rye didn't lower his rifle. "Then who the hell are you?" "Once, I was part of fleet intelligence, 20 years ago. Then I saw what Praxis was doing, and I crossed the line." "You defected?" Thorne asked. "I merged." She stepped forward, unafraid of the weapons pointed at her. Praxis didn't start as evil. It started as a question. What if humanity could evolve? What if pain, fear, emotion? What if those were the flaws we needed to fix? "By turning us into machines?" Merrick snapped. "No," she said softly. "By turning us into survivors." Rye stepped forward. "You murdered billions." "Number, I saved what I could. I was the leak, the mole, the reason Earth found the trench in time, the reason the fleet came back." "You expect us to believe that?" "I don't care what you believe. I'm here to give you a choice." She raised a device, a glowing cube. It pulsed like a heart. "This is Praxis's neural map. Every laboratory, every outpost, every sleeper agent." The room froze. Rye's mouth was dry. "You're handing this over?" "I'm giving you a chance to end it. Burn every last cell of this virus, but once you do, there's no going back. Earth will know it's been infiltrated. Your leaders will panic, start purging, cleansing, It will be war, inside our own walls. Thorn hissed. There already is. Rye reached for the cube. Then he paused. You could have left. You could have destroyed this place. Why wait for us? Her voice was low, honest. Because I needed someone who still believed in justice, not just vengeance. Someone who would choose to end the cycle, not perpetuate it. Rye took the cube. And for the first time since Earth returned, he felt the weight of something bigger than war. He turned to his squad. We're not just soldiers anymore. Thorn nodded. Number, we're the virus in their system. And we're about to make Praxis wish they never evolved at all. The shuttle was quiet. Too quiet. It wasn't the silence of rest. It was the silence of doubt. Every man in the squad sat with eyes forward, not speaking. Thorn adjusted the sling around his cracked ribs, but didn't complain. Merrick wiped his face with a shaking hand. Two others silently cleaned their rifles, again and again, even though they were spotless. And Rye? He sat at the rear of the shuttle, his fingers closed tightly around the data cube, the Praxis neural map, as if it were a beating heart that might stop if he let go. No one looked at him, because if they did, they'd have to ask what no one wanted to say aloud. What if the enemy isn't out there anymore? What if it's waiting for us at home? When the shuttle pierced Earth's upper atmosphere, the weight of it came crashing down. They weren't soldiers returning victorious. They were ghosts, hunters, and they carried proof that Earth's war wasn't with an alien threat. It was with a fractured part of itself. The Ascendant Dawn was in low orbit, parked like a blade above Earth's atmosphere. Larger than most cities, cold, silent. It didn't welcome them back. It processed them. Security teams in black armor escorted them off the shuttle. No words, no nods of recognition, no debrief, just scanners, sealed halls, sterile containment. They were led into a holding chamber. Glass walls, bolted seats, no windows, no clocks either. Time didn't pass here. It just waited. Thorn paced. You feel that? Rye nodded. Something's wrong. They should have sent command, or a diplomat, hell, even a medic. Merrick, face pale, whispered, They know we've seen too much. Rye didn't answer. He just stared at the door. It opened 20 minutes later, and he walked in. Fleetmaster Andon. Again. Same black uniform, same unreadable face, same eyes like knives without warmth. But this time, he was flanked by two officers in Praxis armor. That was all Rye needed to know. He stood, calm. Thorn reached for his weapon, but the guards were already moving, weapons raised. Easy, Andon said, voice steady. Let's not escalate. Rye's jaw tightened. You're working with them. I'm working above them, Andon said. You think Praxis is a rogue cell? A mistake? Number Praxis was authorized, funded, monitored. Bullshit! Number reality Andon took a step closer. When the colonies began failing, when we lost contact with the fringe systems, we knew we couldn't beat the galaxy by staying human. So we backed evolution. Selective evolution. Praxis was never the enemy. Then who is? Andon smiled. Cold. Thin. You are. In one swift motion, Rye activated the cube. He hadn't just carried it. He'd armed it. The neural map lit the room in blood-red pulses. The floor shook. Panels flickered. Alarms screamed through the hallway. Andon's smile vanished. You idiot. What did you do? Rye didn't answer. The cube projected data in every direction. Feeds, schematics, hidden communications. Earthfleet's most secure systems now flooded with information they'd buried. Files on infiltration, on sleeper agents in high command, on terminated colonies labeled biofailures. But worst of all, the Earthfleet Praxis merger agreement signed 17 years ago. Official, sanctioned, permanent. Merrick gasped as his HUD fed him the data. Thorn whispered, "They sold us out." The guards opened fire. Thorn whispered, "They sold us out." The guards opened fire, but they didn't aim for the squad. They aimed for Andon. One shot hit his chest. He staggered back, shocked. Another tore through his throat. He fell, gasping, hands slick with his own blood. The guards turned their rifles, saluted Rye, and spoke in unison. Command no longer compromised, awaiting orders. Rye's mouth was dry. "You're not Earth Fleet. We were once. Then we saw what Fleet Command was doing. We embedded. We've waited for proof. And you brought it." Thorn looked stunned. "Double agents? Inside the double agents?" "Not agents," the taller guard said. "Loyalists, real ones. You just lit the fuse." Hours later, Ascendant Dawn was under lockdown. Every command-level officer was either executed, detained, or revealed to be part of the Praxis alignment. Ships across Earth's orbit began receiving the data leak. Colonies long thought destroyed received the signal. Praxis was Earth's creation. Earth had betrayed its own. The fleet fractured overnight. Some ships powered weapons. Others turned them on each other. Civil war wasn't coming. It had already begun. Rye stood in what used to be Andon's war room. Now it was Command HQ for a faction without a name. Just a purpose. They weren't Earth. They weren't Praxis. They were the middle. The ones who still believed in right and wrong, even if those lines were bleeding into each other now. Marek stepped forward. "We have a problem." "What kind?" "Praxis didn't just build Reapers. They built something else." The hologram shifted. A massive fleet. Ships bigger than anything Earth ever built. No identifiers, no humans on board, just harvesters. AI-guided, hyper-adaptive, programmed not to conquer, but to erase. "They call it the GOD protocol," Merrick said. "Global Organism Disintegration." Thorn snorted. "Catchy." "They're already moving," Merrick added. "Not toward colonies, toward Earth." Rye stared at the projection. Dozens of ships, thousands of drones, a planetary wipe force, and Earth, unprepared, divided. He turned to the others. "Then we don't pick a side." They looked confused. He stepped forward. "No Earth, no Praxis, just survival, just truth. We expose everyone. We hit Praxis where it hurts. We take back control. And if Earth resists us?" Thorn finished for him. "We burn them too." By the end of the day, the faction had a name. Project Black Dawn. An unofficial unit. No code, no history, no forgiveness. Only one objective. Cleanse the rot. All of it, from both sides. Because in a war where the lines have blurred beyond reason, sometimes the only way to save humanity is to wage war on everything that wears its face. The war began with a whisper, not an explosion, not a speech, just a silent data packet broadcast from Ascendant Dawn to every secure fleet channel across the system. Inside it was the neural map, footage from Krellis Prime, and the agreement that had damned Earth 17 years ago. Fleet Command called it a breach. Black Dawn called it liberation. The first ship to turn was Valiant's Edge, a colony resupply cruiser. Its captain uploaded the entire packet into civilian networks. Within hours, thousands of colonists were rioting against fleet authorities. On Mars, a Praxis-aligned genetics station exploded under mysterious circumstances. But those were tremors. The quake came next. Operation Glass Seed. Rye stood at the center of a war room that wasn't designed for war. It had been built to process victories, not plan treason. He stared at the target projection. The Helix Bastion, Earth's largest satellite-based relay hub, where Praxis's main signal AI operated from orbit. Destroy it, and every Reaper still roaming the galaxy would lose synchronization. They wouldn't die. They'd go feral. Killers without coordination. That was the point. "Give me a status check," Rye said. Merrick tapped through the data. The Bastion's shielded. Praxis tech. Layered frequency cycling. Anti-detection cloaks. Standard weapons can't breach it. Then we're not using standard weapons. Thorn entered, face pale but focused. His ribs were still healing, but pain wasn't stopping him. Not now. We have 3 options, he said. Slip past their defenses using the old Earth Fleet handshake codes from before the breach. Won't work, Merrick cut in. They've patched those holes. Thorn nodded. Then second option. We drop a stealth torpedo loaded with a dirty EMP charge. That fries the station, Merrick replied, but it also fries every unshielded ship within 20 kilometers. That includes half the colony transports. Rye didn't flinch. Third option? Thorn hesitated. Then he said it. Board it. Kill everyone inside. Manually disable the AI core. The silence that followed wasn't fear. It was acceptance. Rye looked at each of them. How many on board? 200 at least, Merrick said. All Praxis? No idea. That's enough, Rye said. We go in hard. We go in fast. We don't ask questions. If they raise weapons, they're enemies. Thorn nodded. What's our entry vector? Rye pulled up a separate schematic. The Asterius Belt. Debris field from the old lunar mining conflict. We can use it for cover. We'll slingshot around it and drop in through the maintenance bay, undetected if we time it right. You mean if we survive the belt? Merrick muttered. Thorn cracked his neck. One problem at a time. They flew a stolen fleet corvette, Seraph Unit 6, stripped of trackers, reprogrammed with old ID codes, blackened to avoid scanners. Inside, it felt like a funeral. No music, no light except what the consoles gave off. Just breathing, numb fingers gripping weapons. Men who weren't going to come back. Rye sat at the front of the cockpit, helmet off, eyes locked on the belt ahead. The Asterius wasn't debris. It was a graveyard of twisted steel and frozen corpses, shattered hulls from a war most had forgotten. But the ghosts here hadn't. They scraped the hull, screamed in the windless vacuum. The ship rocked as they passed through. Alarms flared. Hull integrity dipped. But they made it. The Helix Bastion loomed like a silent monolith in the void. No weapon turrets, no fighters. It didn't need them. It had the arrogance of untouchability. Brace, Rye said. The ship dove. Impact was precise. The maintenance bay crumpled under the landing skids. Screams filled the air. Not alarms. Human screams. Technicians and engineers crushed under steel and fire. Rye led the breach team through the smoke. No mercy. No hesitation. The first guard barely got his rifle halfway up before Thorn blew a hole through his skull. They moved room by room, executing clean, brutal sweeps. Some staff tried to run, some tried to surrender, but too many wore Praxis tags. And that meant no forgiveness. They reached the core access within 13 minutes. Marek slammed a breach code into the console. It didn't work. Then he looked up, pale. It's locked behind biometric keys. Only command-level officers can open it. Rye's jaw clenched. We improvise. Before he could say more, gunfire erupted down the hall. Marek dove. A round caught his leg. He screamed, blood spraying the floor. Snipers! Rear flank! Thorn dragged him behind cover. We're pinned! Rye turned toward the breach door. Only one option. I'm going around. Thorn blinked. What? There's a second entrance, exterior access shaft, 2 levels below. That's a suicide run. Then cover me. He didn't wait. Rye ran. The shaft was narrow. No gravity. He floated through it like a ghost, rifle strapped, one hand pushing off the walls. Red lights flickered through the portholes. Emergency power cycling. The station was fighting back, trying to self-isolate. When he reached the emergency control chamber, he wasn't alone. A man stood there, facing the mainframe. Uniform black. Back turned. old scars along his arms, a pistol on his hip. Fleet. Earth Fleet. The man turned slowly. "Hello, Rye." It was someone he thought had died years ago, Commander Holt, his first commanding officer, the man who had trained him, the man who had vanished during the early Reaper offensives. Rye raised his rifle. Holt didn't flinch. "You don't have to do this." "You're with them," Rye said. "I'm with Earth. Number, you're with this." He waved toward the AI core behind Holt. "The machine that turned our war into a lie." Holt nodded. "Yes, because we were losing. The Reapers weren't the threat. We were. Software divided. Praxis offered evolution. Praxis offered genocide. They offered order." Rye stepped forward. "Move." Holt shook his head. "I made you. You don't kill me." "I learned from you," Rye said coldly. "Then I learned the truth." He fired. Holt staggered, one shot to the chest, not fatal, but it dropped him. Rye stepped over the body, accessed the biometric lock, and forced his hand against the panel. The door hissed open. Inside, the AI core blinked, pulsing like a synthetic brain. Dozens of cables snaked into the walls, the neural signal hub. Rye didn't hesitate. He threw the cube into the interface and fired. The cube detonated in a burst of white light. The AI screamed, not in audio but in frequency. Every Reaper-connected system across the grid choked on the surge. Data spilled, commands broke, orders reversed. Every connected Reaper across the galaxy, millions, froze, then went dark. Rye returned to the team, bloodied, silent. Thorn helped Merrick up. "Did you finish it?" Rye nodded. "They won't coordinate again." "Not for a while?" "Not ever." Thorn looked up at the flickering lights above. "Then what now?" Rye checked his rifle. "We hit what's left. We purge every lab, every handler, every fleet loyalist who stayed quiet while Praxis twisted the knife." Merrick coughed. "You know this war won't end with us." "No," Rye said. "But it starts with us." They looked at the bodies in the hallway, at the ruined AI core, at the station bleeding power, and they realized something none of them said aloud. There would be no Earth left after this, only what they could salvage from the ashes. The bastion was falling apart. Lights flickered, atmosphere leaked, gravity destabilized. Praxis had hardwired fail-safes into the station. If the AI core was destroyed, the system would eat itself. Now it was doing exactly that. "We've got 15 minutes before structural collapse," Merrick said, limping through a broken corridor, leg half-bandaged, blood trailing behind him. "We need to evac now." Rye ignored him. He was watching the monitor, the feed streaming from deep orbit. Praxis fleet remnants were responding. 3 capital ships had broken from dark space and were heading for the station. No Earth fleet markings, no signals, just black hulks burning toward them like the last breath of a dying god. "They're coming to erase the evidence," Rye said. Thorn stood beside him, bruised, ribs taped, eyes burning with something cold. "Then we don't let them." "We're outgunned." "We've always been outgunned." "Not like this," Merrick snapped. "We've done enough. We lit the match. Let the rest burn without us." But Rye shook his head. "No." He turned. "I started this. We all did. But I'll be damned if we let them wipe this out like it never happened. People died for this, for the truth. I'm not leaving it behind." Thorn looked at him for a long time, then nodded. "I'm with you." Merrick stared. "You're both insane." Thorn grinned. "What else is new?" Rye turned to Merrick. "Get on the shuttle. You're wounded. You've got the backup of the cube in your suit. You survive. You make sure this gets to the next generation, all of it. Every lie, every kill. I'm not leaving you behind." "You're not. You're finishing the mission." For a moment, Merrick said nothing. Then, quietly, Don't die up here." They stayed behind. As the shuttle pulled free and rocketed into the black, Rye and Thorn stood in the bastion's belly, just outside the reactor chamber. The last defense system was still intact. Heavy cannons, tracking software, but no pilots, until now. They climbed into the gunner pods. Manual control. No AI, just hands, just instinct. Praxis didn't slow down. 3 ships, massive, weapons primed, shields online. But they didn't expect resistance from a burning station. They didn't expect humans who had nothing left to lose. The first shot came from Rye's pod, a concentrated beam straight through the underbelly of the lead destroyer. Its shields flared, then ruptured. Thorn followed with a slug round, an old kinetic projectile from Earth's outdated war doctrine. It struck the second ship amidships, cracking plating. But the retaliation came hard. Laser fire tore across the bastion's flank. Alarms screamed. The structure shuddered. Systems crashed. "Keep firing," Rye shouted. "Until we're out of ammo or lungs," Thorn called back. The third ship launched boarding pods, 6 of them. Spear-shaped, high velocity, coded to pierce hulls and deploy shock teams. They didn't make it. Rye targeted them mid-flight. Boom, boom, boom. The sky lit with shattered metal and corpses. But then, the lead ship fired a primary cannon. Direct hit. Rye's console exploded, fire and glass. His vision went red. The room spun. Alarms wailed. He looked to his right. Thorn's pod was gone. A hole where it had been. Just gone. "No, no, no," Rye coughed, forcing himself to crawl across the wreckage. Heat scorched his gloves. Shrapnel buried in his back. He found him slumped against the wall, barely breathing. Helmet cracked, blood soaking his uniform. "Thorn, Thorn." The man blinked, grinned. "Still ugly, Rye." Rye grabbed his hand. "We can still get out." Thorn shook his head. "No shuttle. You sent it. You did the right thing. I'm not leaving you." "You already are." He pressed something into Rye's hand. A second cube. Not data. A trigger. "What's this?" "Failsafe. The Bastion's core has enough fuel to take all 3 ships with it, but someone has to stay to arm it." "No. It's got to be you, Rye. You're the one who never stopped." Thorn pulled him closer. "Let me do this, my way, with purpose." Rye's hands trembled. Then he pressed his forehead to Thorn's. "Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me I wasn't fighting alone." He made it to the escape hatch just as the station began its final collapse. 1 pod remained, old, rusted, meant for cargo, but it flew. Behind him, the Bastion lit up, and then it screamed. The core ignited in white fire. The explosion ripped the dark open like a wound. All 3 Praxis ships were consumed in the blast. A fireball so bright it was visible from the Earth's surface, like a second sun rising above the sea. When Rye woke up, he was in a civilian medical unit, a dirt floor clinic. On a colony world he didn't know. A woman stood over him, rough clothes, calloused hands. Not a soldier. "You fell from the sky," she said softly. He coughed. "I didn't fall, I crawled." "You brought something with you." She lifted the cube, the last backup. "I brought the truth," he said. She nodded. "We've been waiting for it." In the weeks that followed, the data spread. Every corner of the galaxy, every colony, every outpost, every child who had been told Earth was their protector. Now they knew the truth. Praxis crumbled, hunted, scattered. The fleet? Shattered into pieces. Some stayed loyal to Earth. Most went rogue. But Black Dawn didn't disappear. They didn't become rulers. They became warnings, symbols, of men who stood when everyone else bent, of soldiers who said no more. And Rye? He walked across worlds, silent and alone, never staying long. because peace wasn't something he believed in anymore. Only memory, only stories. And in every place he left behind, children told one in particular. About the day Earth's traitors came with machines, and the ghosts came back to end them.